Hello, I am the instructor for today, Ms. Raiza Azni Suhaini. So for this week, the topic is prepositions. Now before I go on into this topic, prepositions, I would like to ask you, what is prepositions? Right? The answer basically lies in the word itself. Now look at the word prepositions. You notice there is the word position. So basically, preposition has something or much to do with positions. Now let's look at further explanation on prepositions. Prepositions are words which show the relationship between a noun or a pronoun object and some other words in the sentence. So previously you've learned what nouns are and also pronouns. Can you recall what those are? Nouns, that's right, they are basically tables, a person's name, these are considered as nouns. And next would be pronouns. Now pronouns would be, for example, he, she, him, her, and so on. Now let's look at the other explanation. Prepositions are always followed by nouns or pronouns. So as you can see, prepositions cannot stay on its own. It requires the help of nouns and pronouns. Furthermore, prepositions are called the biggest little words in English because they have very important functions. So even though the word preposition consists only at least 2 letters, these prepositions are considered important when constructing sentences. Now we will look into the types of preposition. We will look in terms of time, place, and also others. First, let's look into prepositions in terms of time. We will cover the usage and also the example of these prepositions. First, we will look at the preposition at. So the usage of at will be for night, for weekend, or a certain point of time. Now the example for night will be at night. For weekend, we will state the sentence as at the weekend. And a certain point of time would be at 9:30. Now please take note of this third point, which is a certain point of time, which is the when. As I explain further, you will understand why I highlight this third point. Now, the next preposition is on. So the usage of on would be days of the week. Now, for example, here would be on Monday. And next, in. The preposition of in often is used for the months or seasons, time of day, year, a certain period of time, basically after a certain period of time. Now, the example given here, in August, which is the month, in winter, basically the season, right? Time of day would be in the morning, in the afternoon, right? In terms of year, in 2006, and after a certain period of time, which is in an hour. As I said just now, when I ask you to remember the third point of the first preposition, which is at, so the reason why I ask you to remember is, if you notice, at is followed by a specific time. For example, at 9 o'clock. Then it is followed by on. So on, it becomes bigger, which is day. And then it is then followed by in, which is the year or the month. So if you notice the timeline there, from specific to general. As you know that in terms of in a month or in January, January consists of several days. So which day in that month, you're not quite sure. But if I were to use at 9 o'clock, that is a specific time. So this is why I started off with at, in, and on, to indicate the timeline there. So once again, at would be at a specific time. On would be, it gets bigger, which is the days, and then followed by in, which is followed by a month or a year. Now let's look at the other prepositions that are related to time. Next would be since. Now the usage of since would be from a certain point of time, basically past until now. So for example would be since 1980. So if you are referring to a specific time or year in the past, until now you can use the word since. Next would be for. So when do we use for? The usage would be over a certain period of time, basically past until now. So example would be for 2 years. Another word that I can use here would be in terms of duration. For how long? So for 5 years, for 5 minutes. So these are the usage for for. Next, we have ago, something relating to the past also. So a certain time in the past we use ago. For example, 2 years ago. Another preposition that we use for past would be before. Now, before is used earlier than a certain period of time. So for example here, before 2004. So that means the timeline that I'm referring to would be 2003, 2002, basically before that timeline. And of course, I can use the preposition past. So over a certain point of time, past until now, I can use this preposition. So for example here, for the past 2 years. The next preposition is to. Now please remember the usage of this preposition again is relating to time. So we use the word or the preposition to when telling the time. So for example here, 10 to 6. In other words, it basically means 5:50. So 30 minutes after, it could be 35, 40, 45. So this can be used in terms of time. So is it 5 minutes to 10, 40 minutes to 10, right? So basically it means that before a time given. The next preposition is until. Until is used in the sense of how long something is going to last. So for example here, he is on holiday until Friday. So here you are not giving the duration, like for example, for. You state for how many days. But in this case, we are only indicating the sense of how long. So he will be back until Monday, until next year. So the word that comes after until would be a noun. We can also use from, to, until. So how do we use these prepositions? Basically, it marks the beginning and end of a period of time. So from marks the beginning, to and until marks the ending of the period. So for example, here would be from Monday to Friday, or from Monday until Friday. So both would still be correct to be used. The next preposition relating to time is by. Now the usage of by in the sense of at the latest and up to a certain period of time. So example here would be, I will be back by 6 o'clock. Or I can say, by 11 o'clock, I had read 5 pages. So this basically the sense. If I were to give you a time, I will not give you a specific time. Remember, at 6 o'clock referring to specific. So if I were to say, I will be back at 6 o'clock, it's referring to a specific time. But here I'm just indicating that latest, I could be back by 5:59, 5:50, but it will not exceed 6 o'clock. So this is the usage of by in terms of time. Now we will look into prepositions in relation to place, position, and direction. The first preposition is at. So quite similar, if you notice, for time we use at, for position also we use at. But now you should be able to get an idea that prepositions may overlap, but it all depends on the usage. Are you using it for time or is it for position? So in this case, we are using it for position. So when we use at for position, it basically means next to or by an object. For example, at the door or at the station. It can also be for table, meaning that certain or an object is located at the table. For events also, we can use the word at. For example, at a concert, at a play, at a theater. And also place where you are to do something, typically to watch a film, study, or work. So here it can be at the party, at the cinema. So basically you are at a place for a certain function. And of course you can use it for home or office address. So similar to the time, please remember this point here, home, office, or home or office address. So for example, here is at lot 13 or at number 13. So this is an indication of your home or office address. So please remember this point as I will bring this up in my next point. The next preposition is on. Now the usage of on would be attached. So it means that if something is attached to another thing, usually of course it will be pictures. Pictures are attached to the wall. So we don't use the word attach. Instead, we would say the pictures on the wall. So the example here, the pictures on the wall. For a place with a river, we also use on. London lies on the Thames. Being on a surface, also we use on. So on the table. So when an object is located on a surface, we will state it as on. It can be, of course, in any form of surface, but most often we would say on the table. Another would be for a floor in a house, or it can basically mean in a building. So first floor, second floor, third floor. So if you want to indicate your position to someone, you would basically indicate, I am on third floor, I am on second floor. Next would be for public transport. So when you are taking the bus or plane, you would indicate that you are on the bus or on the plane. I know that some students will find it quite confusing, as when you are located in a bus, as I use, you would think that I am actually in the bus. I'm not on the bus, as it will basically means that this is the bus and I'm actually on it. So as you know, English can be quite funny at times, but as indicated here for the preposition of on, in relation to position, when relating to transport, bus, plane, car, you actually use the preposition on, even though you are referring to within that bus or plane. Next would be for television or radio. So here would be on TV or on the radio. So if I were to be on TV, of course, again, I am not located on top of the TV or on the surface of the TV. I'm actually in that TV. But Even so, we still use the preposition of on to indicate that if I were to see or watch TV, the person in that TV I would indicate as there is a man on TV, or the man on TV is my friend. Next would be on the usage of preposition on for street. So remember, for the first preposition at, the usage is for address, which is very specific, which is the number of your house or your office. Then you have on. Now this is relating to the street. So for example, I would state on Petaling Street. So I live at number 13 on Petaling Street. The next preposition is in. Now the usage of in would be for book, paper, and etc. For example, in the book. Now for car and taxi would be slightly different. Remember, for on you had the transport of bus and also plane. But for car and taxi, we use the word in. So in the car or in a taxi. For picture and world, we also use the preposition in the picture. Now please remember that when it relates to television, we use the word on. But pictures, we use the word in. So in here, because there are no movement when it comes to pictures, it's usually a standstill. So we will state that there is a man in the picture. Then we also have room, building, town, country. So an example here would be in the kitchen or in London. So coming back to my 3 points in relation to at, on, and in, for at, I give you a specific place in terms of my home address or the office address, followed by on, which is the street. And in would be followed by the country or the city. So if I were to state or give you the address, I will state, I am at number 13 on Petaling Street in Malaysia. So as you can see again, it becomes from specific to not specific. As you know, Malaysia is a big country. So where in Malaysia specifically, you do not know. But as it becomes from at, I give you the specific location, and then wider would be the street, and followed by the city or the country. Now, the next preposition would be by or next, to or beside. So basically, this indicates left or right of somebody or something. So I'm not giving you specific left or right, it can be left or right. Right? So June is standing by, next to, beside the car. So you can actually use any of these to indicate when something or somebody is on the left or right of the object. Another preposition for position would be on the ground, lower than, or covered by something else, which is under. So the bag is under the table. So here, on the ground, lower than, or covered, so usually we use the word under. Next, we use below. Below means lower than something else, but not above ground. So I've actually placed this side by side, under and below, because here you may confuse that below can be something to do with ground, whereas under also relating to ground. But here you can see the difference. Under usually related to on the ground, whereas below actually does not have to do with ground. It is actually above the ground. So the example given here, the fish are below the surface. Next preposition would be over. So the usage for over would be covered by something else. It can also mean more than, getting to the other side, also known as across, or overcoming an obstacle. So covered by something else would be, for example, put a jacket over your shirt. So basically you are covering your shirt with a jacket. So you use the preposition over. Next would be meaning more than. So for example, over 16 years of age. So this will be the usage of over. Furthermore, getting to the other side would be walk over the bridge. So when you walk over the bridge, basically you are going across something. So from one point to the other, you are actually going over the bridge. And overcoming an obstacle would be climb over the wall. So you have a wall, the wall is basically the obstacle, of course, so you would want to go over it. The next preposition is above. So above here indicates higher than something else, but not directly over it. So example here, a path above the lake. So we are not basically directly over the lake, but basically higher than the lake. Now here would be across. So across, similar to over, it means getting to the other side. So example would be walk across the bridge or swim across the lake. The next preposition is through. Through, the usage of it is something with limits on top, bottom, and the sides. So usually when we have limits on top, bottom, and sides, we would usually imagine a tunnel. So you know how a tunnel looks like. So when you want to cross over from one point to another through the tunnel. So here, drive through the tunnel. Next would be into. The usage of into is enter a room or a building. So for example here, go into the kitchen or in the house. So when you are going into a room or a building, we use the word into and not in, because you are from outside, you are entering into the house. So we use into. The next preposition is to. So to indicates a movement to a person or building, movement to a place or country, or even for bed. Now, if you want to go to a place, you would say, I want to go to the cinema. Or a country, it would be, I want to go to London or Ireland. And of course, when you want to go to bed, you indicate go to bed. The movement in the direction of something, but not directly to it. So go 5 steps towards the house. So if this was the house, so I'm supposed to go towards the house, but I am actually not going directly to the house. I'm just moving 5 steps where I can actually face the house. But again, this is what it means by not directly onto the object. Now next preposition is onto. So onto would be the movement to the top of something. So for example here is jump onto the table. So again, similar to into, you are from outside, you are going into a room or a place. Whereas onto would be from one point to something higher. Or in this case, the movement to the top. So jump onto the table. From would be in the sense of where from. So in other words would be the point of beginning. Example here, a flower from the garden. So the question is where? Where is it from? The origin. So we use the word from. Now we will look into the prepositions in terms of others. So there are actually other important usage for prepositions apart from time or position. First would be from, where it can also mean who gave it. For example, a present from June. So here indicates something from someone. For preposition of, this indicates who or what does it belong to, or what does it show. For example, a page of the book. Another example, the picture of a palace. So it can means belonging, or it basically tells you what it is all about. For preposition by, can also indicate who made it. For example, a book by Mark Twain. So this indicates the creator of the book would be Mark Twain. On can also be used in terms of walking, riding on horseback, entering a public transport vehicle. So for example here, on foot or on horseback. So when relating to moving from one place to another, right, you would say that, how do I go from point A to point B? I'll go on foot, right? You don't say that I'm going to walk, but instead you would say that, instead you will state on foot, right? And of course, if your transport is a horse, you would say on horseback. When you want to enter a public transport, in this case would be a bus or a train, you would say get on the bus. In can also indicate entering a car or taxi. So of course, we would state get in the car. So here you can see public transportation such as bus, train, we would state that on the bus. But when it comes to in, we use for cars or taxi. So get in the taxi or get in the car. But when it comes to bus, get on the bus or get on the train. And of course, if you want to leave a public transport vehicle, you would indicate get off the train or get off the bus. We can also use by to indicate a rise or fall of something or traveling other than walking or horse riding. So for example here, prices has risen by 10% or by car or by bus. So here the rise and fall would be it has risen or fall by how many percent. And in terms of transportation, if you were to move from one point to another using a vehicle, you will state by followed by the vehicle. So here, please remember, when you are talking about moving from one point to another, you have to know what is the mode of transportation. If you are using your own legs, of course, you would say by foot. And also, if you are using a public transportation, would be by bus. Next would be the usage of at is for age. Now, she learned Russian at 45. So here, 45 indicates the age. Next would be about. So if you want to talk about topics, basically it means what a certain topic is all about. We can use the word about. So we were talking about you. So here the topic would be you. So those were the three prepositions, the usage for time, place, and also other important prepositions. Now we will look at prepositions in terms of tips for speaking. So please bear in mind that prepositions, even for advanced learners of English, find prepositions difficult to use in speaking. Now why is that? One-to-one translation is usually not possible. So even advanced learners of English find it difficult due to the barriers in translating. If you have your own mother tongue with English, you would know or you would understand the difficulty that you face. So that difficulty is not only for beginners or intermediate, but it also falls for advanced learners. So one preposition in your native language might have several translations depending on the situation. So this, of course, as you can see, for the usage of at, I can use it for time. I can also use it for place. So when you state a sentence in your native language, sometimes the prepositions may overlap. So you have to be careful when you do translations. So there are hardly any rules as to when to use which preposition. The prepositions that were given to you were the common prepositions, which we can actually provide usage, an example, explanations, but most of the prepositions will have its own special case. So what are the tips to learn prepositions? Of course, try looking them up in a dictionary. This requires time. If you do a lot of reading in English, that also will help you in understanding the usage of these prepositions. And of course, learning useful phrases by heart. So all these requires a lot of time. It's not something that you learn overnight. So it could be years studying preposition. But of course, the most important tip would be practice makes perfect. So with a lot of practice, I'm sure you'll be able to understand the concept of prepositions. Thank you.